Well, it's great to be here. I'm Jack Anderson from Missouri. I'll be moderating with this cast. Great ensemble of builders we have. I think maybe we just kick it off, go down the line with some quick introductions, a little bit about the project, what stage we're at, and then we can get into building some questions.
Sure. I'm Phin. I'm the head of marketing for Abstract Layer 2. We're full mainnet, been live for 7 or 8 months now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Jethro. I work on growth at Particle Network. We've been live for about 1 year now. We have both an infrastructure side and as well as a sort of 2C side meme coin trading platform built on our infrastructure. So yeah, happy to be here, and thank you Epic Web3 for inviting.
Hey, I'm Sip. I'm the lead at Status Network. Status Network is a project from the Status ecosystem. And we are dedicated to creating fully gasless L2. Yeah, we don't capture any sequencer revenue, so we make revenues through yields, and we distribute that yield to the community. We are in testnet right now. We are implementing spam protection, so I think we're going to have like a very interesting discussion also with Rene here. We plan mainnet for Q1.
My name is Rene. I'm one of the co-founders of Celo. Celo was an L1 that recently transitioned to become an Ethereum L2. Mainnet has been live for over 5 years, so it's been a while since the testnet days. But more recently also incubated and launched, co-founded a project called Self, which has become very popular for basically a bunch of use cases to do identity disclosures while maintaining privacy. So kind of ZK identity. Happy to chat more about that, which it's been really fun.
Awesome. So through testnets, pivots, mainnet forever, like we got a lot of different stages up here. Sticking true to our title, testnets to mainstream, I kind of want to pose the first question. What's the biggest challenge to getting off the ground? Like such a crowded, noisy ecosystem that crypto is. Is it picking your spots? Is it marketing? Maybe not the market, because we all know that's an obvious challenge that's constant, but what's something that you're going through right now or you went through going to mainnet that was a real big tackle?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest answer for us is just that, when you kind of have this like the pre-launch interest in product, there's no actual way to meet expectations for anything that you do. And so you're kind of, no matter what you do, you're always at odds with, no matter how much you think your product is amazing or great, it is always going to flop to a lot of your audience. And, being able to confidently do that over and over again is probably one of the most difficult things about this industry is just you have to confidently fail very publicly, very often. And it's a relentless industry, but it's also the most rewarding because when you do have that one launch that goes really, really well, it makes up for the 10, 20, 30 flops that you had before.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. Like you basically, when you launch, you have to shift your mentality a bit. Like from a very protected sort of environment, you are facing a lot of different types of people. Some might be adversary, but I think the main thing is that mindset shift of being willing to take feedback. I think users today really, they will know or take note that you listen to them. And I think it's not easy to do, but if you do it right, I think that is going to be one of the most important things that you need to focus on when you go into mainnet, yeah.
So interestingly, we come from a bit of different situation where we're already part of a larger ecosystem. And so initially, our chain was really made to serve that ecosystem. And we wanted to offer gasless transactions to that ecosystem. That was the point. So really, literally like an app chain kind of angle. And then we progressively pivoted to what if we offer that gasless throughput to everyone? And so this is kind of linked to what was just said before. It's listening to our users, like what are they really looking for? Oh yeah, just don't want just a single app to be like that. I want like multiple apps. And also making sure that the ecosystem in which you evolve is actually supporting of that goal. And for us, it was kind of a new way to look at that kind of crowded and noisy industry is yes, you need to go after users, but you also need to be very aligned with your own ecosystem. So making sure that you serve the purpose, like if you're on HTML2, making sure that you're aligned with the layer one. And if you work within an already existing set of projects, making sure that your project serves that ecosystem first.
Yeah, maybe just to add, I think the 2025 and sort of things like Cursor, Cloud Code, the cost of shipping new features or software generally has just dramatically reduced. Not just the cost, the time as well, but it doesn't necessarily has made it easier to get user feedback, right? Someone still has to go out there and kind of look at the data or talk to people, understand like what needs to change about the product, right? And so I think that's something that's often overlooked in this current cycle because it's just gotten so much easier, right? But the hard work of actually understanding product market fit and evolving from there, I think that hasn't yet sort of been really aided that much by AI. So I think that's certainly something just to be on the lookout for. But it's nice because as a founder in a small team, you can spend a lot more time on that, right? Because the time required to build and ship stuff has gone down. I think I think sometimes maybe another observation is, and we've seen this a lot in sort of our ecosystem and other ecosystems, right? Whenever people introduce tokens early on in the mix, right? It may give you also wrong data, right? People may use your product or, even the fact that there may be a token, right? And that can skew sort of the data that you're looking at to understand, is your product actually useful to people, right? So I think that's something to, be on the lookout for. But yeah, I think the fundamental laws of, good products apply in crypto as well. They may just require some sort of, separate sort of checklists and caveats, right? To make sure that you're not sort of falling maybe in the trap of thinking you have something that works, but it's really just people that are eager to make some money, down the road instead of actually loving your product.
Awesome. Something Sip actually mentioned there I want to dig into a little bit. Pivoting the ecosystem you were building in, what's something you look for in terms of support and why you might fit in a certain ecosystem? And then to open up to the rest of the panel, what's the best way to support projects developing in your eco? So maybe from both sides, Sip, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, so it's interesting because literally, as Rene said, the main problem of incentives within an ecosystem is mostly linked to tokens. It's not a problem, it's like a feature of like how crypto works, like tokenization, right? But like if I take our case specifically, it was interesting because when I started thinking about the network, one of the main questions that the rest of the Status ecosystem had is like, are you going to launch a token? And I was like, we already have a token, so why should I kind of just launch something else? But at the same time, we needed a way to kind of guarantee the like spam protection of the ecosystem. So we needed to have like some tokens that is kind of attached to the account and so on and so on. So we're not launching a token, but we are just creating an asset that is linked to your account. And so now people are confused, like, oh, is it another token? Can I buy it? No, it's non-transferable. It's like a governance token that is actually governance, not just money that you can throw around. And so it makes like different incentives very separate from what we've seen elsewhere, where you have like a lot of airdrop farmers, which is, I mean, it's a law in the ecosystem. It exists. It's good because it allows to test the product, making sure that people learn about it and try to like get messy with it and see what comes up. But now it's so much about it that it's really hard to say like, hey, these are the real users and all of them are like just running hundreds of tabs or devices to get your token. So launching tokenless is actually a new kind of twist on it and like kind of a new way to look at it. Like, hey, you want to have access to the token? Go buy it. It already exists for like 7 years.
Yeah, and how about, I mean, those responsible incentivization, that's a new one in crypto. So that's pretty sweet. But how do the rest of you guys think about incentivizing projects building on your eco? Maybe we'll start with you, Phin. Whether it's tokens and treasury or if it's professional support and expertise, what's kind of the best way to lean into that for builders?
So from a builder side is interesting. Abstract, we have over 125 apps, I think, live right now on mainnet of different dApps ecosystems projects. About close to 100 of those live on our portal, so our own little app store. I think the kind of interesting thing is like most teams really look for like fractionalized assistance. I think a lot of these like early startups, right? They don't need, they actually don't need as much as a lot of chains give them. I think a lot of chains overextend and offer too much. I think what a lot of these teams look for is guidance, right? And especially with Abstract, we curated our team to be really filled with people who had experienced building product before and had actually been involved in numerous startups and knew what it took to kind of build right with like 2 or 3 of your friends and build something scrappy, right? Because that's what most of these builders are. It's a lot of like small teams, they're scrappy. And so what they're really looking for is kind of this like fractional assistance, right? So for me to come in, right, as the head of marketing, like really they just want me to come in, look at their product, tell them, hey, you're doing this right, you're talking about this part the right way, lean in more here, that kind of thing. And so what I found is like from our side, what we found is most beneficial. It's, we don't give grants, we don't, finance these teams. We say, hey, look, your job is to make revenue. We're going to get you from 0 to revenue as fast as we can. And it's your job to capitalize on that and make sure that you're then becoming, kind of successful in your own 2 feet. And again, we found that that's propped up now. We have, I think we just crossed over 10 of those apps, which are now in the last 6 months over $1 million in revenue, which is a pretty amazing number for us. We're really proud of that. That's 10 teams that have actually made money in crypto, which, a lot of ecosystems, right? There's not many products that hit that. So we think that a lot of the approach is just kind of, offering this fractionalized support, paying attention to where like they might not need dev support, right? They're just looking for marketing. They're just looking for, business development. They're just looking for intros. And, you're really like a lot of these teams are just essentially giving out a lot of dead weight that they're going to have to figure out later in terms of token grants and KPI based grant goals. So, that's kind of our current approach, I would say, from our side.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think I'll speak from the perspective of both a 2B side and a 2C side project. From a 2B side, a bit of a hot take. I don't think that applications should be limited to being betas in a L1 or L2 ecosystem. I think they should exist on their own strengths. And that is what we have been focused on building on. The thing about Particle is we are not really a very standard chain per se. What we enable builders is that you can tap onto different liquidity from different chains, even if you're built on another chain. For example, we have projects that are built on Solana that would love to tap into like USDC on Arbitrum, USDC on Base. So through us, it's a one click for them. So I would say that from a 2B side of things, definitely focus more on your application, focus on your users. I think the ecosystem will help, but ultimately you are going to be the driving force. So that's from the 2B side. From the 2C side, I can tell you if you don't have a very strong ecosystem helping you, you're going to be quite lonely, right? And for builders, I think that is one of the major things that a lot of people are looking for. You're looking for community. You're looking for people who have a shared vision. So my sort of take on this is that if you are a builder, what kind of ecosystem you should select will really be based on what the priorities of a chain is. For example, like Abstract, very consumer focused, right? And if you're really focusing on the consumer, tap into Abstract for sure. Like they have a lot of very strong community members, a lot of users, but at the same time, you don't have to neglect the fact that you are not limited to just the Abstract ecosystem. So to summarize everything, from the 2B side, I think it's going to be a very app-driven sort of meta coming soon. And so the focus should really be on your users and on your product. But from 2C side, you want community, you want friends, you want people who want to help you along the way. So that's how I would see like looking into how you want to choose your ecosystem you want to participate in. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. We've certainly seen in the last 5 years all kinds of different iterations of like builder support programs. And I think TLDR is probably, there's different stages, right, in the builder journey. And like, you kind of want to find good ways to support people along the way, right? Some people may just want to try this out, right, and see if it's for them. And so they show up to a hackathon, and how do you make that easy for them to get started and like build something in a couple of hours that gives them some joy, right, and some success? Great. Then there are those that are really serious about setting up a true business, right? And then it's that's a different kind of support. And I think what we found for us, the sweet spot, the last few years has really been most builders, when you ask them, I mean, everybody will say they want money, but what they really say is they want users, right? So that they can build a business that makes money. And so rather than taking a grant, they would much happier just find ways, right, where you can help them give access to distribution. And so from a kind of ecosystem chain perspective on the seller side, we've been pretty focused on that. So there's some big wallets in the ecosystem. Opera MiniPay is one example. Opera has 500 million active users around the world through their browsers, and recently have launched a wallet called MiniPay, which has sort of like these mini apps, right, that give very easy and very sort of if you've played with Farcaster or World, kind of similar concept, right? Like sort of immediate kind of connect to the app. You can play around, like use the currencies in your wallet and so on. The big difference is there's massive distribution there, right? So you can have an app that goes live and day one has like hundreds of thousands of people trying it out, right? So that's really something that we felt is something unique we can bring to builders. And so a lot of our focus more recently has been, okay, we can, and I totally agree with the point, right? Like I think if you're building, don't limit yourself to one chain, right? Depending on what you're doing, you could definitely attract kind of audience to different channels, but make your product sort of what comes first, right? Rather than sort of doing that. And yeah, so I think for us, it's been, how do we help builders get their product to a point where they're ready for, having hundreds of thousands of people in the app. And it's not a good starting point, right? You should start it with like, fewer people first, see if it works, if it scales, right? And if the game mechanics, if whatever it is, right, are working out before you tap into that. But for those that are ready, this is kind of the best thing that can happen, right? And so we've definitely seen some applications just, really leveraging that flywheel to become pretty big very fast. So yeah, going forward, that's going to be continued focus, right? Just kind of distribution. I think a lot of the technical things have become pretty commoditized, right? So I think there's always going to be ways to differentiate, but I think that, to me, distribution is the key factor here.
Can I ask a question to Rene?
Please.
Awesome. Thank you. So you talk about distribution, and I really like it because this is one of our main focus at the moment as well. And I would be super interested in learning how you guys landed Opera, because definitely that was like a big user for you. So what was the process? What can we all can learn about approaching more Web2 companies or like traditional companies and onboard them?
Yeah, I wish there was sort of a blueprint that could be easily replicated with other companies, because then I think we would be just doing that. What I've found is it takes a very special combination of, in this case, people in the company that had been working in Web3 and then had come back to Opera, had that kind of knowledge. So they built MiniPay in-house, which is kind of nuts, right? You would think, oh, maybe we built it for them or someone else did, an agency, right? But it's built in-house. They ship updates every 2 weeks, and it's just amazing to see them. They're treating this like a real product, right? That has all the support of a big public company, but also has the knowledge of like how crypto works, right? And so I think that's been pretty powerful. I think what happened with Opera for us, they've been an early partner for us. So we've done a few kind of smaller campaigns and things. They had a kind of an old kind of crypto wallet that they were looking to kind of depreciate and then sort of build something new. And so at the time they were starting to do that, we already knew them and talked to them about it. And so I think what resonated was just with Cello, I mean, you know this, right? We've been from the early days focused on global markets, payments, sort of like real world DeFi use cases. And that's what they wanted to do. And so like, okay, yeah, this alliance, right? Let's do it. And now fast forward like 3 years into this partnership, it's I have weekly calls with their team. A bunch of my team has kind of multiple touch points a week, right? So it's really it's a big investment for us too. I think that's not to underestimate, right? I think sometimes you have these big announcements like, oh yeah, so and so partners with so and so, and then there's a nice headline, right? But unless you put in the work, it's probably just going to be a headline. But yeah, I wish there was, what's the next Opera? There are others. I think it takes sort of like a special combination, and I haven't seen that in too many other companies.
Yeah.
I think that's great perspective from both sides on just ecosystem support. I think a common thread that you guys talked about, though, is like focused teams, like building your product market fit, finding users, doing the groundwork. In this industry with such a hot ball of money, so many new trends and topics, whether it be AI, stablecoins, RWAs, like the new shiny object, we love it because we write about it all. But how do you guys balance staying focused on your mission and then also exploring, dipping your toes in the new cool stuff that happens and pops up?
Oh man, I don't. I wish I could. It's the funniest thing. I think before working on a blockchain and like working in the chain side, I was a very avid, just try everything and do everything user. I just don't have the time. It genuinely just becomes that like most of my focus is not what is someone else doing really cool and how can I do it. It's more of like, okay, someone's doing something really cool somewhere else. Is there a way I can have that happen on Abstract? And so I find myself less and less, jumping into every new thing, right? Where like, Aster pops up and I'm not feeling like FOMO about jumping into it. I'm like, interesting. Let me see how that goes. And like, is this going to be a switch to like, a more competitive perps world, right? And then how do we take advantage of that? So at least like from an ecosystem perspective side, I'm mostly looking at like, okay, all these new trends, how long are they lasting on average, right? And, especially because for the most part with Abstract, we've tried to take our own approach to as much as we can. We've tried to not really follow in the footsteps of anyone else and to try and differ from the kind of traditional path that a lot of blockchains were going for a long time. And so, for me, I really care a lot about not copying and not just like saying, oh, they're doing it, so we have to do it also, but more of saying, okay, they did it. Why do people like that they did it? And how can we replicate that in the future if it's still a thing? Because, good Lord, it could be dead in 60 days and then we're on to the next meta. So
60 days, that's a lot.
I know, that's a long time. I know, I was being a little ambitious cycle there. I'm a little ambitious, but.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's always a thing with new trends that you're not sure how long they will last. I think it's valuable to be part of the trend somehow. I'm not telling you to entirely pivot your whole business towards that trend and go all in, but at least to serve or sort of find a way to be in that conversation, find a way to facilitate that conversation. I think that is very important for builders. That's the truth, because Web3 is super noisy space. Like almost like everyone would love to be the application that is leading the conversation, right? Everyone would want to be the pump fund. Everyone wants to be the hyperliquid. But the truth is not everyone is going to be that. But you have to be strategic about how you want to participate in that conversation with an ultimate north star of, okay, ultimately, this is my opinion that Web3 will not stray away from revenue generating businesses. So how do you get to that north star? By participating in some of those conversations, integrating some of those things that are very hype in the space right now. And how do you use that to build for a better future? I think that is something I think it's pretty useful, yeah.
So I'm personally, I've been a degen for a long time. And so I've been trying all the apps under the sun, losing a lot of money everywhere, but having fun on chain. And when I started working on that project, I was like, oh yeah, we can do this and that and that, and that's awesome. The reality is that we are a very small team, and delivering a gaseous chain is one of the hardest things I've ever done technically so far. And so we are very focused on making that a reality first, and then we'll see. And we think that we are creating a new business model for L2s. L2s are not making money anymore. If you look at Base, they're pretty much the only one making money. Everyone is losing money. So how can we create a new revenue generating model that works for L2s, that still derives security from Ethereum, but that allows new apps to be created? And so this is our focus now. We want to deliver that new piece of technology that no one has been able to do well so far. And I think when we will launch mainnet, this is the moment where we'll kind of look everywhere and be like, okay, so now what can having gaseous transaction, what does that allow? That allows for more privacy, more anonymization of accounts. So that's one big narrative that we are pursuing. We're also part of Status and Logos ecosystem, which is like super focused on privacy. So of course, this is kind of a longer trend, I would say. And I think also as an industry, that's probably the longest narrative and meta we should be pursuing at the moment, because it's ultimately, I mean, with ZK technology and with a lot of very cool new tech, we are able to have that unique selling proposition that other ecosystems can't create. Like traditional apps are private just because they store on their own database and they encrypt it, but that's it. In crypto, we have the opportunity to create decentralized private systems, and I think it's worth pursuing, and we should be focusing on that. So yeah, my point is when we launch mainnet, we will see what kind of application is unique to using, like to not paying gas, and especially private applications, how they can leverage that. So yeah, TLDR, we're super focused even if the distractions are everywhere right now.
Yeah, I would say, in this industry, you gotta stay curious, and you have to have people on your team who are curious, right? I mean, so I spend my weekends looking at playing with mini apps, right? Just to kind of see what's out there. And I think that's, I think, I forget who said it earlier, but you don't have to pivot the whole thing, right? If something is interesting, but there's probably new technology coming out every day, right, that can help shape, maybe put you on a faster track to your own mission, right? So I think seeing that and finding ways to kind of incorporate it, I think that's powerful. And then I think the second thing I would say is beyond the team, surround yourself with people that are deep experts in these areas, right, and keep them close. I mean, stablecoins obviously have been super hot recently. Now, I mean, Vitalik just posted and talking about non-dollar stablecoins, and you see on Twitter people talking about non-dollar stablecoins, right? Something like in our ecosystem, Mento has been, doing for years at this point, and they're the experts. They're seeing sort of these on-chain FX markets, and so I feel okay, as some of these kind of themes, narratives become very hot, and there's attention on it, which is in crypto is very helpful, right? When a narrative becomes hot, it means a lot of capital goes towards it, right? Then it's great to have people that you can go to. You can say, hey, this is something that's happening. How do we take advantage of that to grow your application faster or to get more users to come in and participate? And I think it's important to pay attention to these narratives because they do have impact on capital flows, but doing it in a way where you're sort of not doing it because it is the narrative, but because it's there, but you're just noticing that it's a moment of opportunity potentially to get somewhere faster where you're already going.
I think something we have been beating around the bush a little bit, but it's a common theme, is users. I mean, growth, adoption, everything requires individual people. And I think in crypto, we've been living in a bubble for a long time. Rene, maybe I want to go back to you to start, just being around in a mainstay with Celo. Where do you think the next group of user acquisition is going to be? And how should crypto projects start doing that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll go back to the Opera example. So they just announced that they crossed 10 million users on the MiniPay wallet. I think 2 million of those are active on a weekly basis. We know they're all real kind of people because they've sort of, self-verified at least their phone number, in some cases their ID. So that's pretty powerful because when they're doing stuff, when they're sending peer-to-peer payments, it's not just bots having fun. And from a seller perspective, we're very focused on, the next step here is just from the 10 million, go to the 500 million that are already Opera users and other products, right? So that's a pretty set journey. Beyond that, I think, it's either finding the next Opera or finding other opportunities, right? Kind of existing audiences that you can attach this to, which I think is, what I think a lot of people are trying, right? So I think the only other path I see is you build something that has such strong kind of product market fit at the application level, right? That it almost doesn't matter that it has sort of crypto in the background, and that drives sort of viral adoption, right? And I think there's examples for that we've seen for sure as well. But I think the tech is ready for that to happen more often now, and I think we're starting to see it, right?
I think crypto applications becoming more mainstream requires that. People don't even know it's Web3 in the background, everything like that. In my mind, we have this balance of this open, decentralized internet, and then when real users start using the products, they want privacy. They want guarantees. They want kind of justice ramifications. When you guys are building or looking at apps, maybe abstract in the consumer ecosystem, I feel like a lot of those builders are angling for an app that doesn't look like crypto. How do you kind of think about the balance? Like, just being a crypto native guy, I want everything to be open, decentralized, like kind of the ethos of it, but understanding user needs and everything, you know, where do you make concessions in that?
Oh, I have my easiest one, which is more of like the litmus test of like what people want versus what they do, right? There's this kind of, I think there's a misalignment in crypto of people, you know, preach this one version of things and then practice a different. The easiest way that I say is like I look around a room and I ask people like, how much cash are you carrying, right? And the amount of cash you carry in, you know, in relation to your actual net worth is how much you truly care about self-custody, right? Because if you cared about self-custody, you would not use a credit card, you would not use a debit card, and you would not have Apple Pay on your phone. So like the end consumer wants a product where they you know, swipe their card and it works. And that if something goes wrong, there's a fail-safe. And that's a really tough balance in crypto because we do believe in this wild west of the internet where there is this kind of like desire for people to do whatever they want, whenever they want, and it's their money. 99% of people should not be trusted with their own money. And we see this time and time again. We know this happens. We see it on a very regular basis. People download a malicious link or something on their computer and they're like, where did all my money go? It's like, well, you shouldn't have had access to all of your money like that. That's not a safe behavior. So I think with Abstract, one of the interesting things that we really care about a lot is understanding, again, what does the actual net consumer user want? How do you provide them a product that feels comfortable to them, but also would allow for a native crypto user to have access to the control that they'd like. And so I think what it really ends up being is shaping that conversation less about how do you make a wallet better, and instead thinking about how do you make someone have an account that can access the money that's on the internet. And really allowing, again, the user to choose to turn on expert mode and not handing the user expert mode. And we've proven it quite well time and time again. So we use a smart contract wallet built with Privy. We have less than 1 minute zero to funded account status right now and about a 40% retention on 30-day, which is, you know, again, a traditional Ethereum wallet's at like a 5% retention. And that's because it's not familiar. No one knows how to use it. You can't just hand it to people and expect they're going to pick it up. And I think as we continue down this path of like consumer crypto and products and wanting things to go mainstream, I think if teams don't pivot to that mentality, they are absolutely going to get left behind if they still kind of lean back and are like, yeah, but what about DeFi summer? And it's like, it's years ago, right? We're not like that anymore and we can't be. If you want 1 million users, you need 1 million people, and 1 million people are not going to want to use an EOA.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. It's the same future we are building for, in the sense that the users, the next batch of users, will have no idea what a blockchain is, will have no idea that a certain application they use is actually on chain. It's just like, I hope that this comes to reality where it's just like when you go to the internet, you don't think, oh yeah, I'm connecting via TCP/IP to this website and whatnot. It's very intuitive, very simple. What's the website? Hey, do I need to sign up with my email account? All of this stuff. I think that is going to be where the next batch of users are. Of course, I think with the younger generation, we have a lot of people in the industry who are like in their teens. My COO is actually 19 years old. You have this group of people who are coming up, who are super native on, understanding how the internet works, understanding trends and these kind of things, catching on to things a lot faster. So I definitely think if you are looking at a very long term, you are building for this group of people. And that has been evident in what kind of products come out. I think meme coins is a very good exemplification of what the next generation looks like, and prediction markets as well. Basically, the younger generation is coming up, and there's going to be a huge wealth redistribution, I think. And it's time to start thinking, I think in Web3 or in crypto, the timelines we think tend to be very short, but if we really want a sustainable environment, a sustainable place to build, it's time to start thinking 10 years, 20 years later, who are the users? And I think to focus on that will unlock all the users that you want. Yeah.
So on our end, I think it's a weird balance between the cypherpunks ideals and philosophy, and the necessity for people, like for normal people, to be onboarded. And I've done that experience multiple times recently with a lot of friends. So my best friend got married 2 weeks ago, and I created a POAP. And so I was like, big QR code on the screen. Hey guys, this is a POAP for the wedding, and so on and so on. We had 20 people actually connecting their wallet and like getting the POAP. I was super happy. And then I looked at how they did it. 100% of them was through Google. So they just connected like either MetaMask through Google or like directly on the POAP website with Google, and they got their POAP. So, and the only person that did it through MetaMask, it's because I did it with her. And on the onboarding, she was like, "Oh yeah, email, boom," and that was that. That was it. She didn't even thought about like the seed phrase and so on and so on. So. And then on the other side, we're like, yeah, but we want to have fully decentralized systems that are, very censorship resistant and that can live forever and so on and so on. So it's a fine balance to find between the two. And on our end, if we look at the kind of gasless part, it's what it makes the bridge possible with normal builders. And this is really how we position ourselves, is to say we want to be able to get to Web2 organizations, like more like traditional game studios, for example, and tell them, look, we know you hate the blockchain and you don't want to have anything to do with it, but to manage digital assets, this is the best technology you can have. But you can abstract it all away because you don't have to ask people to bridge, which is a concept that is totally foreign for 99% of the people. So I think, yeah, this is the weird mix between we want to have like non-custodial wallets and so on, but at the same time, people still want to have a Web2 UX. And so that's why we're exploring that kind of gasless part, where we want to allow any app to do that, and they can decide how cypherpunk they want to go, or super Google they want to go.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's a delicate balance catering to a TradFi. We can't be living this bubble forever. So onboarding is important, everything like that. Another question that might get a little more complex, but let me know how you guys think about token models of new projects. Like, so we talked about the governance token before, how it didn't turn out like everyone thought it would maybe in DeFi summer. But for a project launching today, just starting to get building, we talked about launching without a token, things like that. What kind of advice or maybe opinion would you have on launching a token?
Gosh, it's a tricky one. I think the most important thing for me is, when teams are wanting to launch tokens or talking about launching tokens, is really pushing them to ask why, right? To really get into the detail, because I think a lot of the time people are told to launch a token because it's expected of them. The problem with that is if that's the reason you're launching a token, you should not launch a token. I think also very importantly, with a lot of teams is that they focus too much on token as the model. Like that's their product, right? And then their actual product doesn't matter, and it kind of becomes like a price action of the token is all you're judged by, right? As soon as that token comes out, your product is irrelevant, and the price action of the token is the most relevant thing. The best marketing is that the number goes up. The worst marketing is the number goes down. And so I think especially what's been really great to see in our ecosystem is these apps that are revenue positive are realizing they might not have to launch a token. That might not be their moment of, making some money. And it also doesn't come with the potential for the baggage of what happens after a token is launched, and the kind of financial baggage and community baggage and emotional baggage that carries with a lot of products if the product is not strong enough to stand on its own first. And I think, especially we're kind of seeing this with like this buyback meta and revenue model is like, really what people are realizing is that the most important companies are revenue positive. They're putting cash in the bank, and they're able to use that cash. And on the flip side is like these companies that are using their token as an endless source of essentially liquidity sucked from their community are going to be problematic, because if they're not making revenue and their only source of revenue is when someone buys the token, they can sell the token and they can put cash in the bank, that's just not going to work. So, big thing is really educating teams on like, okay, you want a token. Why do you want a token? What are you going to use it for? How is it going to, benefit your users? And how are you going to minimize kind of the risk and impact to your experience?
Yeah, I would say the best way to lose all the attention is to launch your token. Like, typically most projects, once you launch your token, nobody talks about you anymore. And I think that is a situation that we all have to deal with, but it's, yeah, I go back to the point that Phin mentioned, that the token is not the end goal. It's just a means for you to have utility in your ecosystem. And it's the mechanism itself came from the fact that it is to foster a network. And there are a lot of situations, it's of course a case-by-case thing, whether you're building an application or whatever, but you really have to have a very good use case about a token. But I feel that founders or builders shouldn't be too worried about the token part. I think the revenue part is way more important, because once you have that, I think there's a lot of things you can do with your token. Whether you want to do a buyback, whether it's for more utility, whether it's to expand into different ecosystems. I think you have the owner. So I think the meta has shifted. Past 10 years or so, the token was the product. I think we have reached a stage more or less where everyone is aware that this cannot exist forever. And that's why revenue first, token second. Yeah.
So I don't agree. No, actually, I agree on the revenue part. I think it's important, of course, because we want to build sustainable businesses and so on. The reality is that if you launch a token at 200 million valuation and you held somehow through a treasury or whatever, 30% of it, to make enough revenue to be equivalent to that amount of cash is going to take you years. And then suddenly you are actually in possession of that kind of simile cash. Of course, you can't cash it out because you will crash your token, which is bad marketing. But it also gives you, it opens up a new universe. So let me explain a bit more. On our end, it's very strange for me, for example, to be leading that project because we already have a token in the market for 7 years. And I can't do, like, ultimately, no one did anything with it for a long time, mostly because of the regulations and, you know, like the environment with the government and so on. And then suddenly everything changed. And so now we're like, okay, what new token models can we invent? And I think, and this is like kind of contrary to what you guys said, I think we are just beginning to explore what tokens can do. I think tokens are a fantastic way to coordinate, are a fantastic way to raise capital, are a fantastic way to organize governance, to organize growth, if it's intentional. And if when the token was built or was designed, there was that intentionality of like, yeah, we want to do it for that. That's the goal. And so like taking our example, we already have that token. I couldn't use it for governance straight away because it's a liquid token, and then suddenly like a few whales come in and they can just like wreck your entire network. So we needed a token that is non-transferable. And how do you generate it? Like, how do you give it to people? How do you mint it? And then suddenly you can build an economy that is around that token, but that token doesn't necessarily has a sell value. And so again, like that's kind of a new model that, you know, Barra Chain explored in some ways. Katana is looking at it now. Curve was really kind of the first ones to do it at the exchange level. We do it more at the kind of the chain level. But I think it's kind of just the beginning where people are exploring, okay, yeah, I can launch a token, but what can I do with it and how it will benefit my ecosystem?
Yeah, I think maybe the one thing to not lose sight of is there's a story of like early Uber drivers, right? Like when Uber first started as just a black car service in San Francisco. And those guys, I think they're interviewed when Uber IPO'd, right? And they obviously didn't have any equity in the company and like they were still driving Uber, right? And that's pretty sad, right? That's pretty sad because they were probably pretty critical to the success of Uber. And they should have had a stake, and they were believing in the concept because they were, you know, not driving their normal black car service, but driving for Uber. So, you know, that to me is a great example of, you know, a token economy, right? Like those guys couldn't have had shares in the startup. It would have just been too, from a legal perspective, too complex, too kind of structure. And then there's like certain rules around like how many people can own shares in a company at this early stage and so on, right? So I think there's definitely, I'm a big believer that like, yeah, every business, like in the future, right, should be community owned by their users, right? That's a beautiful model. I mean, maybe not every, but most probably. So, so that's awesome. I think we've lost sight of that a little bit, and I think this is where actually like when we started Self, like this was a pretty kind of conscious part of the process, because we were seeing projects really struggle with doing early token allocations to users, right? And like airdrops are broken, right? You're just gonna you're not going to achieve actually distributing your token to your real users or to real people, right? And so I think part of the motivation behind Self was to say, okay, we want to give projects better tools to, if they want to kind of have their early users participate and be owners in their protocol, right? To do that in a way where they can do that without forcing their users through KYC, which also, obviously is not something I would ever want to see again. Hopefully, you have people, getting like putting their information getting hacked, right? And just by being in crypto, right, are extra sort of like targets. So that's not the right path. And so I personally am, I think bullish. I think maybe reframing revenue. I think revenue depends on the business, but I think even just like product market fit, right? If you have product market fit, then great, have a token, give your early users the ability to participate in the success, and be sort of owners. And I think there's probably now the tools to do that in ways where where that works. But yeah, we're not there yet.
I appreciate all these guys so much for the insightful panels. We're getting the red light. There's a bunch of great panels coming after us. I know I'm sticking around, so just thank these guys. Thank you all for being here. And let's have a great day. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.